I've recorded this video a few times and it's been too long and I just haven't been too happy with how it turned out. So I'm going to do it again, and this time I'm just going to talk. I am very unsatisfied with a number of gun reviews on YouTube. This is guns, gear, accessories, all of that kind of thing. And the reason for that is because I believe they offer little to no practical and useful data, but they claim that they do. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not talking about like military surplus videos where people are talking about rifles like this one and they're saying, here's some features that this has or anything like that. And I'm also not talking about videos where somebody's setting out to be just entertaining, where they're trying to be funny or just shoot guns for a good time and show that to you. I'm talking about videos where people are looking at you and saying, you should buy this product, and they haven't shot more than 50 rounds through it. Or they have it on a gun and they haven't put more than 50 rounds through it while it's been attached to a gun. Or anything like that. So I've recently been looking at some handguns, and while I was trying to find some YouTube videos on them, so many of the reviews were like this. Somebody would pick it up, they'd pull it out of the box where it was brand new, either because they had just bought it or because the company sent it to them to review. And they would check to make sure it was clear, of course. And then they would look at it and talk about how nice it felt in their hands. And they would flip the safety and say, oh yeah, I really like that. And they'd pull the trigger and they'd go, ooh, that's like a good 4-pound trigger. That's really nice. And then they would go through their review and they would say, I really like this handgun. I definitely think this is good for concealed carry or for duty use. So you should consider buying this. Or maybe they would say, all right, let's take it to the range and shoot it. And they'd really slow take 10 rounds of slow fire. And then they'd say, ooh, that's a really short reset. And they'd say all of this type of information. And they'd talk about how nice this firearm is, but they haven't put it through the paces. You know, when I buy a firearm, especially something that's modern that I'm going to use and possibly count on my life for, I want to know, is it dependable? Is it reliable? Is it going to break after 200 rounds? Is it going to be reliable when I need it? Is it going to be reliable if I drop it in sand? Or is it going to be reliable if I shoot 200 rounds through it and don't have a chance to clean it and then need to pick it up and use it? Those are the questions I'm asking. I'm not asking if I fire really slowly and intentionally, is the trigger reset good? And so many of these reviews on YouTube are exactly like that. And I think part of the reason why is because a lot of YouTubers have gotten into this rhythm where a company will send them a product. And once they receive this product, the company will tell them they want a review by a certain date or whatever. And either because they don't have time or just because they don't want to and ammo is expensive, they don't spend the money to put these guns through their paces. And I think because of that, we all suffer. Now, there is a time for tabletop reviews where somebody is looking at a gun and they're talking about certain features that it has. Maybe they're talking about the safety position that they like or something like that. But if you're going to make a recommendation of a product, you need to have used it. And this isn't just YouTube videos. The same problem happens in Amazon comments. You'll read Amazon reviews for a product and people will say something like, oh, I just got it in the mail and it looks really good. Okay, I don't care if it looks really good. I care if you've taken it out and used it and it's actually been effective and useful. Now, it's one thing when that's a jacket that somebody got on Amazon, but it's something completely different when it's a firearm. We've seen countless YouTubers do this type of thing recently with a number of different firearms. And one of the big ones that's been kind of in the news recently is the Springfield, I think it's called the Helion, that weird bullpup thing. And frankly, I don't know enough to talk about it. I don't care. But I've seen claims that a certain YouTuber, and I'm not going to name names because I don't want to start fights, that he reviewed this and claimed he fired 400 rounds through it, which again, isn't that much. But he claimed he fired 400 rounds through it and it worked. And then he sold it on Gunbroker and said that he had fired 100 rounds. So these are the types of things, there's just this dishonesty. And I'd like to talk about one YouTuber that I really appreciate that is doing this really well. It is the Hungry Handgunner. He's a smaller channel. I think he's around 8,000 to 12,000 subscribers or something like that. Maybe he's a little bit bigger than that. And in most of his reviews, he's put at least 1,000 rounds through a gun, maybe occasionally less than that. In his video I saw recently on a Henry lever action 22, he started with 1,000 rounds, and he was open about that. And he said, I put 1,000 rounds through this, and I know that's not much, especially for 22 when you can get a box of 500 rounds for 30 bucks. And so he was honest about the fact that that wasn't very much. And he was open about that, but he had still put it through its paces and still found it to be quality. And if I'm going to buy a firearm, I want to know it's been tested. So my big problem with so many of these gun reviews is that they are talking about their firearms and treating their firearms like they've been tested, but they haven't tested them. They have this air of authority where they will, like I said, they'll look at it, they'll talk about the ergonomics, they'll talk about how nice the trigger is, and then they'll talk about how it's a quality carry gun. And simply put, I think they're having so much pride in themselves that they think that with their eyes they can figure that out. And that's just not the case. And if you look at some YouTubers who have tested these budget options to a more consistent standard and have put plenty of rounds through them, you'll see that sometimes they don't hold up, even though people have said that they do. So here is my PSA. If you are a small channel like mine, before you review a firearm and recommend that people purchase it, especially if it hasn't been vetted other places, you should probably put at least 500 rounds in it. That's not very much, but it's a start. Obviously, that's a little bit different. If it's something like a Ruger 1022, there are so many places you can go to see that those can survive a very long amount of time. But if it's something that hasn't really been tested and it's being imported from a shady source, you really should test it more than a tabletop review and 2 magazines before you recommend it to anyone. My message for those of you who are not content creators. Firstly, don't trust people just because they talk like they are smart. This is a really easy way to make some very poor choices. There are certain people that I believe have a good reputation. Like I mentioned, Hungry Handgunner. I really like him. And if he tells me a firearm is good, I'm going to have a little bit more trust in it because I watch him on a more consistent basis. So be careful where you are getting your information. Make sure that you can actually trust the source. There are a lot of people that might seem trustworthy and talk like they're trustworthy, but they will take money over integrity any day. Secondly, when you buy a firearm, especially if it's a budget firearm, before you get ready to bet your life on it, take it out and shoot it. Take it out and shoot it with cheap ammo, take it out and shoot it with expensive ammo, take it out and shoot it with defensive ammo. It doesn't matter, just take it out and shoot it with what you have and see how it runs. With a lot of these things, the problems might not appear in under 100 rounds. The problems might start to appear on 500 rounds or 1,000 rounds, and you really want to take it out and shoot it and figure that out. And shoot it hard. Get some sand on it, get some snow on it, get some water on it. Run it until it gets dirty and see if it continues to run after that. Don't just fire a couple magazines through it and then start carrying it every day. I think you should do this with all firearms, but this is especially true with some of the more budget options. Finally, you should be shooting what you own, especially defensive guns. It is not enough to fire 2 magazines through a gun and then not only assume that it is useful, but also that you are proficient with it. You should be shooting it on a regular basis. I pretty frequently take people out to shoot, and every time I'm out, I'm sure to fire at least 1 magazine through this gun, usually 2, and if I can, a full box. And that's because this gun might be a carry gun for me, so I want to make sure that I'm proficient with it. Not just I can pull the trigger and make it go bang, but I want to make sure I'm proficient with it, and I want to make sure that it is reliable. All of that being said, I am 8mm Mauser Man who hopefully didn't kick the hornet's nest of budget YouTube reviewers too hard, and I lived on.
Which proves it's hard to get the best of a man named John. John.